It's Erin here with Kinderlaunch Consulting, and I'm going to discuss today some tips, 5 tips actually, to help you with pricing strategies that will maximize your revenue at your preschool or childcare center. So before I start, I want to say how important I think it is to really be strategic with your pricing. We are in an industry where margins can be quite tight. It can take a while in some areas to become profitable. So being very mindful of our pricing strategies can have an enormous impact on our ability to provide a successful service and have a successful business. So keep these things in mind as you are developing your pricing strategy. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, it may come as a bit of a surprise, is no discounts. And I say that because I think if your tuition is appropriately priced, then you shouldn't need to give discounts. Your tuition should really be competitive. And if you're having to do a lot of discounts, that may be a sign of a bigger pricing problem. So that means that I don't do sibling discounts, referral discounts, any of those types of discounts. I think that you should be able to attract families without those discounts. If you are doing those types of discounts, I think that the discounts should really serve as a marketing tool to bring you families that you wouldn't otherwise be getting anyways. But if you are generating new families through word of mouth, through your social media presence, then I don't think you need to rely on that referral discount. Same thing goes with the family discounts. Although if you do want to do it, I recommend keeping it small, maybe 5% as opposed to 10% for those older students, but especially not for the younger students where you have the really low ratios. And I think this probably is most applicable to a more private pay community, but just something to think about. It's actually something that I've seen a lot of schools in the industry move away from. So if you are going to do discounts, I think you should really make sure that they are working to your advantage from a marketing standpoint. Next, number 2, consider doing tiered rates. So just like in the airline industry, there may be people on your next flight that have all paid different prices for the same seats. And it just depends on when they purchase their seat, and the market fluctuates. So you might want to consider having several different rate tiers. One example of this might be introductory rates, for example. So like when I started marketing my new school before we opened, I had a number of families who signed up before they were ever able to tour the school. So they got a special introductory rate. Those were families that were taking a leap of faith, signing up for a school that they'd never seen. They had just talked to me, communicated with me. And then once the school was opened, or shortly before it opened, we started another set of rates. And so now we have families on 2 different levels of rates, but you can even have a 3rd set of rates, for example. So you could, in the new year, like in January, start a 3rd set of rates. Or if you're already a school that's open and running and you realize that your market can support higher rates than what you're doing, you don't necessarily have to wait for that 1-year mark and just do 1 rate adjustment per year. You could start new families, all incoming new families, on a new rate. And then say that 2nd rate becomes the rate for the original families at that 1-year mark in August or September. So consider doing those tiered rates to your advantage if you do have a market that can support higher rates. 3rd, no credit cards. I do not recommend accepting credit cards at your school, and I will tell you why. Because depending on what service provider you use, they typically charge a fee of anywhere from 2.5% to 3%, and that is straight off your revenue. We are not talking about your profit. And anyone that really can use a credit card, let's be honest, they have so many perks with points and things like that. People are going to use their credit card even if they don't really need to use a credit card to pay for their tuition, and I think it has a huge impact on you. For example, think if you're bringing in $100,000 in a month, just for an example, and you're paying 3%, that's $3,000 just straight out the door just in credit card fees. So that definitely adds up. And a lot of the providers that we'll use for billing try to make it challenging not to accept credit cards because it's a great revenue generator for them. So for example, I use ProCare, and when we bring on a new family, they want me to charge new families that have not yet enrolled but are enrolling a registration fee with a credit card. And there are usually workarounds. So I will enroll a family but put them in a waitlist class. So I'm able to bring them on, and I just have this class that I've called Waitlist that I move them to, and it allows me to charge the family that fee through an automatic bank transfer. So I really like doing those ACH transfers. They go through quickly, and they don't have those fees attached. So if you are currently accepting credit cards, consider whether or not that's something you want to continue doing, because it is a really large expense, particularly on an annual basis, that can make or break you. Or, if you remove that fee, that might mean bringing on another staff member. So just consider where that money is going and if that's really the best utilization for those funds. Number 4, consider doing full-time requirements for your low ratio classes, or in some cases, some schools these days are only offering full-time in any of their classes. It can be very expensive if you have a low ratio class like a toddler class or a 2-year-old class to pay staff members if you have children that are going home half day. Quite often, we are not able to operate afternoon programs for new students. I have seen some examples of this happen at the older ages, so your pre-K age, your junior kindergarten age, but there's definitely a priority to have children going to care in the mornings. If you think about it, a lot of children nap in the afternoons. So if you are offering, say, half-day programs for your toddlers or your 2-year-olds, and you have half of your 4 students, say you have a 1-to-4 student-teacher ratio in a toddler class, for example, and half of those students go home at half day, then you've got a teacher that you're continuing to pay at the same rate who's only responsible for 2 children, and that's a really expensive ratio to run. So for my younger classes, I do require a minimum 5-day full-day schedule, and that's something that you may want to consider too. Lastly, number 5, consider doing paid waitlists. If you do have a program that has a waitlist for any of your programs, particularly those younger programs, consider a paid waitlist. I know schools that will say they have long waitlists, but if there is no commitment from the family to jump on your waitlist, there's no reason they won't do it, and that's not really a great indicator of how interested a family is. So I do run waitlists for my programs, and I charge a fee for those waitlists. The fee does go towards registration when the children end up enrolling. So in those situations, it's not an additional revenue generator. But for families that just want that safekeeping, we get a lot of pregnant families, for example, that want to jump on that wait list, but in the end maybe aren't entirely sure when they will end up enrolling, but they want that spot. I do require that paid fee to be on the wait list, and sometimes they end up holding off, sometimes they end up enrolling. So those are 5 pricing strategies that I recommend for a successful preschool business or operating a childcare center. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below. Always feel free to reach out we're grow@kinderlaunchconsulting.com, and please check out our other videos for more news coming your way.